Chapter 10 means not to be overcharged with sorrow. To help us further herein, besides that which hath been formerly spoken. 1. We must take heed of building an ungrounded confidence of happiness for time to come, which makes us when changes come, 1. Unacquainted with them, 2. Takes away expectation of them, 3. And preparation for them. When anything is strange and sudden, and lights upon us unfurnished and unfenced, it must needs put our spirits out of frame. It is good therefore to make all kind of troubles familiar to us, in our thoughts at least, and this will break the force of them. It is good to fence our souls beforehand against all assaults, as men use to keep out the sea, by raising banks, and if a breach be made, to repair it presently. We had need to maintain a strong garrison of holy reasons against the assaults of strong passions. We may hope for the best, but fear the worst, and prepare to bear whatsoever. We say that a set diet is dangerous, because variety of occasions will force us upon breaking of it, so in this world of changes we cannot resolve upon any certain condition of life, for upon alteration the mind is out of frame. We cannot say this or that trouble shall not befall, yet we may, by help of the Spirit, say, nothing that doth befall shall make me do that which is unworthy of a Christian. That which others make easy by suffering, that a wise man makes easy by thinking of beforehand. If we expect the worst, when it comes, it is no more than we thought of. If better befalls us, then it is the sweeter to us, the less we expected it. Our Saviour foretells the worst. In the world you shall have tribulation, John 16:33, therefore look for it, but then he will not leave us. Satan deludes with fair promises, but when the contrary falls out, he leaves his followers in their distresses. We desire peace and rest, but we seek it not in its own place. There is a rest for God's people, Hebrew 4:9, but that is not here, nor yet, but it remains for them. They rest from their labors, Revelation 14:13, but that is after they are dead in the Lord. There is no sound rest till then. Yet this caution must be remembered, that we shape not in our fancies such troubles as are never likely to fall out. It comes either from weakness or guiltiness, to fear shadows. We shall not need to make crosses, they will, as we say of foul weather, come before they be sent for. How many evils do people fear, from which they have no further hurt than what is bred only by their causeless fears? Nor yet, if they be probable, must we think of them so as to be altogether so affected, as if undoubtedly they would come, for so we give certain strength to an uncertain cross, and usurp upon God, by anticipating that which may never come to pass. It was rashness in David to say, I shall one day perish by the hand of Saul, 1 Samuel 27:1. If they be such troubles as will certainly come to pass, as parting with friends and contentments, at least, by death, then, 1. Think of them so as not to be much dismayed, but furnish thy heart with strength beforehand, that they may fall the lighter. 2. Think of them so as not to give up the bucklers to passion, and lie open as a fair mark for any uncomfortable accident to strike to the heart, nor yet so think of them as to despise them, but to consider of God's meaning in them and how to take good by them. 3. Think of the things we enjoy, so as to moderate our enjoying of them, by considering there must be a parting, and therefore how we shall be able to bear it when it comes. 2. If we desire not to be overcharged with sorrow when that which we fear is fallen upon us, we must then beforehand look that our love to anything in this world shoot not so far as that, when the time of severing cometh, we part with so much of our hearts by that rent. Those that love too much will always grieve too much. It is the greatness of our affections which causes the sharpness of our afflictions. He that cannot abound without pride and high-mindedness, will not want without too much dejectedness. Love is planted for such things as can return love, and make us better by loving them, wherein we shall satisfy our love to the full. It is pity so sweet an affection should be lost. So sorrow is for sin, and for other things, as they make sin the more bitter to us. The life of a Christian should be a meditation how to unloose his affections from inferior things. He will easily die that is dead before in affection. But this will never be, unless the soul sees something better than all things in the world, upon which it may bestow itself. In that measure our affections die in their excessive motion to things below, as they are taken up with the love and admiration of the best things. He that is much in heaven in his thoughts is free from being tossed with tempests here below. The top of those mountains that are above the middle region are so quiet as that the lightest things, as ashes, lie still, and are not moved. The way to mortify earthly members, that bestir themselves in us, is to mind things above, Colossians 3:1 and 5. The more the ways of wisdom lead us on high, the more we avoid the snares below. In the uncertainty of all events here, labor to frame that contentment in and from our own selves which the things themselves will not yield, frame peace by freeing our hearts from too much fear, and riches by freeing our hearts from covetous desires. Frame a sufficiency out of contentedness. If the soul itself be out of tune, outward things will do no more good than a fair shoe to a gouty foot. And seek not ourselves abroad out of ourselves in the conceits of other men. A man shall never live quietly that hath not learned to be set light by of others. He that is little in his own eyes will not be troubled to be little in the eyes of others. Men that set too high a price upon themselves, when others will not come to their price, are discontent. Those whose condition is above their worth, and their pride above their condition, shall never want sorrow, yet we must maintain our authority, and the image of God in our places, for that is God's and not ours, and we ought so to carry ourselves as we approve ourselves to their consciences. Though we have not their good words. Let none despise thy youth, saith St. Paul to Timothy, 1 Timothy 4:12, that is, walk so before them as they shall have no cause. It is not in our own power what other men think or speak, but it is in our power, by God's grace, to live so that none can think ill of us, but by slandering, and none believe ill but by too much credulity. 3. When anything seizes upon us, we must take heed we mingle not our own passions with it, we must neither bring sin to, nor mingle sin with, the suffering, for that will trouble the spirit more than the trouble itself. We are more to deal with our own hearts than with the trouble itself. We are not hurt till our souls be hurt. God will not have it in the power of any creature to hurt our souls, but by our own treason against ourselves. Therefore we should have our hearts in continual jealousy, for they are ready to deceive the best. In sudden encounters some sin doth many times discover itself, the seed whereof lieth hid in our natures, which we think ourselves very free from. Who would have thought the seeds of murmuring had lurked in the meek nature of Moses? That the seeds of murder had lurked in the pitiful heart of David? 2 Samuel 12:9, that the seeds of denial of Christ, Matthew 26:72, had lain hid in the zealous affection of Peter towards Christ? If passions break out from us, which we are not naturally inclined unto, and over which by grace we have got a great conquest, how watchful need we be over ourselves in those things, which, by temper, custom, and company we are carried unto? And what cause have we to fear continually that we are worse than we take ourselves to be? There are many unruly passions lie hid in us, until they be drawn out by something that meets with them, either 1. By way of opposition, as when the truth of God spiritually unfolded meets with some beloved corruption, it swells bigger. The force of gunpowder is not known until some spark light on it, and oftentimes the stillest natures, if crossed, discover the deepest corruptions. Sometimes it is drawn out by dealing with the opposite spirits of other men. Oftentimes retired men know not what lies hid in themselves. 2. sometimes by crosses, as many people, whilst the freshness and vigour of their spirits lasts, and while the flower of age, and a full supply of all things continues, seem to be of a pleasing and calm disposition, but afterwards, when changes come, like Job's wife, they are discovered. Job 2:9. Then that which in nature is unsubbed, openly appears. 3. Temptations likewise have a searching power to bring that to light in us which was hidden before. Satan hath been a winnower and a sifter of old. Luke 22:3. He thought if Job had been but touched in his body, he would have cursed God to his face. Job 1. Some men, out of policy, conceal their passion until they see some advantage to let it out, as Esau smothered his hatred until his father's death. Open hatreds make the place of vindication disappear. When the restraint is taken away, men, as we say, show themselves in their pure naturals. Unloose a tiger or a lion, and you know what he is. 4. Further, let us see more every day into the state of our own souls. What a shame is it that so nimble and swift a spirit as the soul is, that can mount up to heaven, and from thence come down into the earth in an instant, should, whilst it looks over all other things, overlook itself. That it should be skilful in the story almost of all times and places, and yet ignorant of the story of itself. That we should know what is done in the court and country, and beyond the seas, and be ignorant of what is done at home in our own hearts. That we should live known to others, and yet die unknown to ourselves. That we should be able to give account of anything better than of ourselves to ourselves. This is the cause why we stand in our own light, why we think better of ourselves than others, and better than is cause. This is that which hinders all reformation, for how can we reform that which we are not willing to see, and so we lose one of the surest evidences of our sincerity, which is a willingness to search into our hearts, and to be searched by others. A sincere heart will offer itself to trial. And therefore let us sift our actions, and our passions, and see what is flesh in them, and what is spirit, and so separate the precious from the vile. It is good likewise to consider what sin we were guilty of before, which moved God to give us up to excess in any passion, and wherein we have grieved his Spirit. Passion will be more moderate when thus it knows it must come to the trial and censure. This course will either make us weary of passion, or else passion will make us weary of this strict course. We shall find it the safest way to give our hearts no rest till we have wrought on them to purpose, and gotten the mastery over them. When the soul is inured to this dealing with itself, it will learn the skill to command, and passions will be soon commanded, as being inured to be examined and checked, as we see dogs, and such like domestical creatures, that will not regard a stranger, yet will be quieted in brawls presently by the voice of their master, to which they are accustomed. This fits us for service. Unbroken spirits are like unbroken horses, unfit for any use until they be thoroughly subdued. 5. And it were best to prevent, as much as in us lieth, the very first risings, before the soul be overcast. Passions are but little motions at the first, but grow as rivers do, greater and greater, the farther they are carried from their spring. The first risings are the more to be looked unto, because there is most danger in them, and we have least care over them. Sin, like rust, or a canker, will by little and little eat out all the graces of the soul. There is no staying when we are once down the hill, till we come to the bottom. No sin but is easier kept out than driven out. If we cannot prevent wicked thoughts, yet we may deny them lodging in our hearts. It is our giving willing entertainment to sinful motions that increases guilt, and hinders our peace. It is that which moves God to give us up to a further degree of evil affections. Therefore what we are afraid to do before men, we should be afraid to think before God. It would much further our peace to keep our judgments clear, as being the eye of the soul, whereby we may discern in every action and passion what is good and what is evil, as likewise to preserve tenderness of heart, that may check us at the first, and not brook the least evil being discovered. When the heart begins once to be kindled, it is easy to smother the smoke of passion, which otherwise will fume up into the head, and gather into so thick a cloud as we shall lose the sight of ourselves, and what is best to be done. And therefore David here labors to take up his heart at the first. His care was to crush the very first insurrections of his soul, before they came to break forth into open rebellion. Storms we know rise out of little gusts. Little risings neglected cover the soul before we are aware. If we would check these risings, and stifle them in their birth, they would not break out afterwards to the reproach of religion, to the scandal of the weak, to the offense of the strong, to the grief of God's Spirit in us, to the disturbance of our own spirits in doing good, and to the disheartening of us in troubling of our inward peace, and thereby weakening our assurance. Therefore let us stop beginnings as much as may be, and so soon as they begin to rise, let us begin to examine what raised them, and whither they are about to carry us. Psalm 4:4. The way to be still is to examine ourselves first, and then censure what stands not with reason. As David doth, when he had given way to unbefitting thoughts of God's providence, so foolish, saith he, was I, and as a beast before thee. Psalm 73:22. Especially then, look to these sinful stirrings when thou art to deal with God. I am to have communion with a God of peace. What then do turbulent thoughts and affections in my heart? I am to deal with. Abraham drove away the bird. Troublesome thoughts, like birds, will come before they be sent for, but they should find entertainment accordingly. 6. In all our grievance let us look to something that may comfort us, as well as discourage. Look to that we enjoy, as well as that we want. As in prosperity God mingles some crosses to diet us, so in all crosses there is something to comfort us. As there is a vanity lies hid in the best worldly good, so there is a blessing lies hid in the worst worldly evil. God usually makes up that with some advantage in another kind, wherein we are inferior to others. Others are in greater place, so they are in greater danger. Others be richer, so their cares and snares be greater. The poor in the world may be richer in faith than they. James 2:5. The soul can better digest and master a low estate than a prosperous, and under some abasement, it is in a less distance from God. Others are not so afflicted as we, then they have less experience of God's gracious power than we. Others may have more healthy bodies, but souls less weaned from the world. We would not change conditions with them, so as to have their spirits with their condition. For one half of our lives, the meanest are as happy and free from cares, as the greatest monarch, that is, while both sleep, and usually the sleep of the one is sweeter than the sleep of the other. What is all that the earth can afford us, if God deny health? And this a man in the meanest condition may enjoy. That wherein one man differs from another, is but title, and but for a little time, death levels all. There is scarce any man, but the good he receives from God is more than the ill he feels, if our unthankful hearts would suffer us to think so. Is not our health more than our sickness? Do we not enjoy more than we want, I mean, of the things that are necessary? Are not our good days more than our evil? But we would go to heaven upon roses, and usually one cross is more taken to heart than 100 blessings. So unkindly we deal with God. Is God indebted to us? Doth he owe us anything? Those that deserve nothing should be content with anything. We should look to others as good as ourselves, as well as to ourselves, and then we shall see it is not our own case only. Who are we that we should look for an exempted condition from those troubles which God's dearest children are addicted unto? Thus when we are surprised contrary to our looking for and liking, we should study rather how to exercise some grace, than give way to any passion. Think, now is a time to exercise our patience, our wisdom, and other graces. By this means we shall turn that to our greatest advantage, which Satan intends greatest hurt to us by. Thus we shall not only master every condition, but make it serviceable to our good. If nature teach bees, not only to gather honey out of sweet flowers, but out of bitter, shall not grace teach us to draw even out of the bitterest condition something to better our souls? We learn to tame all creatures, even the wildest, that we may bring them to our use, and why should we give way to our own unruly passions? 7. It were good to have in our eye the beauty of a well-ordered soul, and we should think that nothing in this world is of sufficient worth to put us out of frame. The sanctified soul should be like the sun in this, which though it worketh upon all these inferior bodies, and cherishes them by light and influence, yet is not moved nor wrought upon by them again, but keeps its own lustre and distance, so our spirits, being of a heavenly breed, should rule other things beneath them, and not be ruled by them. It is a holy state of soul to be under the power of nothing beneath itself. Are we stirred? Then consider, is this matter worth the loss of my quiet? What we esteem, that we love, what we love, we labor for, and therefore let us esteem highly of a clear, calm temper, whereby we both enjoy our God and ourselves, and know how to rank all things else. It is against nature for inferior things to rule that which the wise disposer of all things hath set above them. We owe the flesh neither suit nor service, we are no debtors to it. The more we set before the soul that quiet estate in heaven which the souls of perfect men now enjoy, and itself ere long shall enjoy there, the more it will be in love with it, and endeavor to attain unto it. And because the soul never worketh better than when it is raised up by some strong and sweet affection, let us look upon our nature, as it is in Christ, in whom it is pure, sweet, calm, meek, every way lovely. This sight is a changing sight, love is an affection of imitation, we affect a likeness to him we love. Let us learn of Christ to be humble and meek, and then we shall find rest to our souls. Matthew 11:29. The setting of an excellent idea and platform before us, will raise and draw up our souls higher, and make us sensible of the least moving of spirit, that shall be contrary to that, the attainment whereof we have in our desires. He will hardly attain to mean things, that sets not before him higher perfection. Naturally we love to see symmetry and proportion, even in a dead picture, and are much taken with some curious piece. But why should we not rather labor to keep the affections of the soul in due proportion? Seeing a meek and well-ordered soul is not only lovely in the sight of men and angels, but is much set by the great God himself. But now the greatest care of those that set highest price upon themselves is, how to compose their outward carriage in some graceful manner, never studying how to compose their spirits, and rather how to cover the deformity of their passions than to cure them. Whence it is that the foulest inward vices are covered with the fairest visards, and to make this the worse, all this is counted the best breeding. The Hebrews placed all their happiness in peace, and when they would comprise much in one word, they would wish peace. This was that the angels brought news from heaven, at the birth of Christ, Luke 2:14. Now peace rises out of quietness and order, and God that is the God of peace, is the God of order. 1 Corinthians 14:33. What is health, but when all the members are in their due positure, and all the humours in a settled quiet? Whence arises the beauty of the world, but from that comely order wherein every creature is placed, the more glorious and excellent creatures above, and the less below. So it is in the soul, the best constitution of it is when by the Spirit of God it is so ordered, as that all be in subjection to the law of the mind. What a sight were it for the feet to be where the head is, and the earth to be where the heaven is, to see all turned upside down. And to a spiritual eye it seems as great a deformity, to see the soul to be under the rule of sinful passions. Comeliness rises out of the fit proportion of divers members to make up one body, when every member hath a beauty in itself, and is likewise well suited to other parts. A fair face and a crooked body, comely upper parts, and the lower parts uncomely, suit not well, because comeliness stands in oneness, in a fit agreement of many parts to one. When there is the head of a man, and the body of a beast, it is a monster in nature, and is it not as monstrous for to have an understanding head, and a fierce untamed heart? It cannot but raise up a holy indignation in us against these risings, when we consider how unbeseeming they are. What do these base passions in a heart dedicated to God, and given up to the government of His Spirit? What an indignity is it for princes to go afoot, and servants on horseback? For those to rule, whose place is to be ruled. As being good attendants, but bad guides. It was Ham's curse to be a servant of servants, Genesis 9:25. 8. This must be strengthened with a strong self-denial, without which there can be no good done in religion. There be two things that most trouble us in the way to heaven, corruption within us, and the cross without us. That which is within us must be denied, that that which is without us may be endured. Otherwise we cannot follow Him by whom we look to be saved. The gate, the entrance of religion, is narrow. We must strip ourselves of ourselves before we can enter. If we bring any ruling lust to religion, it will prove a bitter root of some gross sin, or of apostasy and final desperation. Those that sought the praise of men more than the praise of God, John 12:43, could not believe, because that lust of ambition would, when it should be crossed, draw them away. The young man thought it better for Christ to lose a disciple than that he should lose his possession, and therefore went away as he came, Matthew 19:22. The third ground, Matthew 13:25, came to nothing, because the plough had not gone deep enough to break up the roots, whereby their hearts were fastened to earthly contentments. This self-denial we must carry with us through all the parts of religion, both in our active and passive obedience, for in obedience there must be a subjection to a superior, but corrupt self neither is subject, nor can be, Romans 8:7. It will have an oar in everything, and makes everything, religion, serviceable to itself. It is the idol of the world, or rather the god that is set highest of all in the soul, and so God Himself is made but an idol. It is hard to deny a friend who is another self, harder to deny a wife that lieth in the bosom, but most hard to deny ourselves. Nothing so near us as ourselves to ourselves, and yet nothing so far off. Nothing so dear, and yet nothing so malicious and troublesome. Hypocrites would part with the fruit of their body, Micah 6:7, sooner than the sin of their souls.